More scenes, I can go on and on. The upper left-hand corner here is where, you know, obviously damage has been done to this house here. We're going back to try to get the power back on for them. More traffic control, rural highway. I think this is maybe Sevierville Pike. Here, you saw this is a person fixing to, this is a switch out right here. If you can focus in, that little thing is hanging down there. That needs to be up to the top. And when that goes back in service, then they'll be back in service. It's a fuse that's out. And we're able to do some of the restoration. Is that simple? You know, as simple as putting fuses back in. And then one of the more dramatic jobs, we had a UT hospital. I don't know if y'all recall it or not, but in the height of the storm, UT hospital was out of power. The UT hospital had power coming in from two different directions, transmission line size power coming in from two different directions. Both of those were out at first and for several hours. They were one of our focuses at the start of the restoration to get them back on. We ultimately did. But this is one of the 69 lines that was used to feed UT Hospital. This is actually parallel an Alcoa Highway, up above it, if you will, off of Alcoa Highway. Parallels the highway. You wouldn't even know it's there, but it's almost like you're in the Smokies. You can't hardly see anything. This is existing power line right-of-way where we had three structures that were torn down as part of the outage. We had to cut a road in with bulldozers to get access to the road to all this. And then because of the steepness of the terrain, we had to use the bulldozer to pull our four-wheel drive vehicles to the top of the ridges and to pull the poles into place with the bulldozers. You might not can see it here, but that's a road cut there. There's a bulldozer right there. And the line trucks are up there now trying to work on that particular structure. These were called H structures, where they got two poles up like this, and they got another pole going across. These are big transmission lines. Big deals. What you haven't seen here in these pictures, you haven't seen pictures in the dark. Our crews worked around the clock, daylight or dark. The dark pictures don't show up real well. In fact, when you take the pictures of them in the dark, all that reflective stuff in their desk just kind of blinds them, and the picture just boom, you know. But people worked around the clock, and they worked 16-hour shifts on, 8 hours off. 8 hours off, really not 8 hours off. You got to drive home, you got to take a shower, you got to eat, and you got to be back within 8 hours. People were tired before this was over, but people were out there working throughout the outage, throughout all these days. So how did our restoration efforts go? Here's a graphical representation of this first storm. Starting at 6 p.m., we basically had nobody out. When the storm hit by 8 o'clock, we had over 44,000 customers out. Now, our order of priority on reestablishing service is to, number one, you got critical facilities that we look after. If a hospital is out, okay, number priority to get back on. If you got a wastewater plant or water plant out, you got a South Central Bell phone switch out, you got a jail out, and critical infrastructure, first thing. Next thing, transmission lines or substations, parts of the system that gets the most people back on the quickest. That's what you prioritize. And then after you get some of that in, you focus on, okay, if I replace this tree, if it gets me 100 customers out, but if I do this other job, I'm getting 10 customers out, I do the 100 customer job. So we prioritize all the work based upon the number of customers that will restore service to. And you can see how that makes a difference at the start. By focusing on the most people on jobs first, you get people on faster. And within the first 8-10 hours there, we were down, say, 10,000 customers by early Tuesday morning. Still a long time for anybody, but most of the folks we were able to get back on pretty quick. After you get on, the transmission lines back up, the substations back working right, and everything else, you start as you go on and on and on during the day, and throughout the restoration project, you're bringing on less and less customers for each unit of work. Eventually you get to where a unit of work will get one customer on. You'll have to replace one pole or one transformer, or maybe even a series of poles and some wire for one customer when you get down in this realm of the work. So look at this chart. By the time we rolled into Wednesday evening, starting with 44,000 customers out, we've restored power to almost everybody but 1,000. And we were still working around the clock. We still had all kinds of KUB crews. We had contract crews. We had contract crews from other cities in here helping us restore power. But we were feeling pretty good about things. And then we had the next storm. Now this storm was a storm that everybody's been talking about. The National Weather Service actually had a webcast about this on Monday. We've heard about this storm coming since Monday. I bet Jim Cantori has probably been flown in and around in Alabama since Tuesday. This was a predicted sort of thing. And if you recall that particular Wednesday, we'd had some rain, we had a little bit of storms, but it hadn't seemed to me like we'd escaped everything. Then all of a sudden we didn't. And as you can see from both the inset map and then this map itself, right up the valley, both hail, thunderstorms, and even tornadoes up through the valley here. I'm fixing to play a clip here, having played a clip here of a call our dispatchers made, and we'll listen to it, then I'll talk more about it. Corey, you play that.
Dispatch 3 to all units. Dispatch 3 to all units. The strong storm cells moving into Farragut coming in from the west, from the North City. It's producing hail, lightning, and rain. All west units and anyone in the vicinity from Alcoa Highway back around the PAL, stand down, seek shelter. Go on.
Now, that's one of our dispatchers giving the call to everybody out working. Remember, when this hit, we had a couple hundred people in the field, in bucket trucks and on the ground doing things when the storm came in. And believe it or not, as near as anybody can recall, it's the first time we've ever told our crews to seek shelter. And it was it's still a pretty emotional time for all the folks that worked out there. And they took it to heart, and they all got down, thank goodness, and did seek shelter. And as Ms. Rose said, there were an awful lot of our customers out there that were listening to the radio and the television, knew what was coming, and went out there and talked to our crews before the storm hit, and got them in their basements, got them in their garages. And then our other crew members got underneath the overpasses and whatnot, and the storm finally did hit. And this next clip that I'm going to have Coy play is just a reminder of what happened that day. That was a YouTube clip from a person took here in Knoxville of the hailstorm. It sort of represents, I guess what all of us lived through a little bit, depending on where you live. And as you can see, all the tree branches and the leaves coming down there, if you went in places that were impacted like this, like say you're in Spoy Hills, the next day when you went out there, you didn't see any grass. You didn't even see a road. I mean, all you saw was leaves. I mean, everywhere was just carpeted with leaves where the hailstorm came through. But the result of that was another set of outages. Immediately following this storm, remember we had worked our way down from 44,000 customers out to about 1,000 customers out in 48 hours. After this hailstorm came through, and really there was a couple of series of storms came through back to back, we were back up to about 24,000 customers out. Having to basically do a restart here on our restoration efforts. Again, this shows that the main area of impact was almost similar to the last storm, in that Sequoia Hills, Rocky Hill, Lake Moore Hills, that sort of area was hit hard, whereas the Union County, Halls area, other parts of our service territory were not impacted as strong. So the storms tracked real similar to the last time around. We previously had crews in from Johnson City and Greenville helping us the first storm. When this storm came through, if you go back, here you can see it went right up the valley. So the Johnson City crews and the Greenville crews had to go back home to repair their damage on the second storm. So we brought crews in from out of Kentucky. Several different cities out of Kentucky came in to help us, as well as a crew out of Clinton came in to help us on the next few days worth of restoration efforts. This time around, same sort of chart. If you look at the customer restoration deal, you work on transmission lines first, you work on the biggest, what gets the most customers on at a time next, and you just work your way down through the order. You can see the progress we've made in restoring customers here. Again, a continuation of everybody on deck, working 16 hours on, 8 hours off, continuing through Saturday, with starting to release some workers late Saturday evening as we approached having everybody back on. So in all, it was almost a 7-day restoration effort and collectively it was about 75,000 customers out of power at one time or the other. Now, statistics-wise, what are all some of the numbers associated with the storm? Well, we fielded about 45,000 calls from customers. We had 34 crews of our own, line crews, various linemen out working throughout the storm. We had 21 different contract crews in here helping out with the effort. We had 35 support crews, and from really the support crews were from throughout the KUB organization, helping in different ways. We had tree crews in here, cutting trees out. The Wednesday storm that happened, that caught everybody while we were out working, a lot of our crews got trapped behind down trees, and we had to get a tree crew in there to cut the tree down so they could leave to go on to the next job. Oh, they were trapped and there were more down trees. There were almost 1,300 jobs, 1,300 individual things that had to be fixed in order to get people back in service. A lot of the work still remained after we got everybody back in work. When all the street lights got down, or if a pole got down, there's a street light pole and it had just a street light wire on it. That was just something to be done the next week. Still a lot of follow-up work to be done. We replaced 142 poles. We put up almost 5 miles, almost 6 miles of new wire associated with the storm. So just a lot of kind of overwhelming statistics associated with the storm here. Cost-wise, the storm cost us about $2 million. Biggest part of that being labor and then inventory. In addition to that, we had our own damage associated with the storm. We had 100+ vehicles that had hail damage. We had a couple of dozen vehicles that had their windshields busted. Some cases, the side mirrors were actually busted and torn off from the hail damage. But in total, the storm cost us about $2 million, as near as we can tell right now. Still looking at the costs associated with all of it. As Ms. Roach said, though, I guess the proudest thing we can be, and the most thankful we can be, is that there was nobody that got hurt. You go out in places where trees are down, and it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and you're on your third day of a 16-hour shift. It'd be easy to twist an ankle. It'd be easy to have a misstep. It'd be easy to do lots of things. Everything they're doing out there, restoring power, is dangerous. It's heavy. It's big. It's got electricity on it, and yet nobody got hurt. A great thing to talk about, and great accolades to all the workers involved. Throughout the effort, one of the things we tried to focus on was trying to keep our customers communicated with. We had 10 different media advisories, basically 2 a day that I was involved with anyway. We'd get together and issue media advisories to 10 of those. You may recall that Russell Bivens did a feature on us on Do My Job. Had a WBR on Friday, did a newsmaker interview about the storm. We had a special tape message from the COO put out on our website. The outage map was used extensively by all the coverage. We always included with our media advisories a general expectation of how long we're going to be. You know, understand that customers have an angst about knowing about their specific situation. You know, do I need to go get a hotel tonight? This is a common thing you'd be asked when you're out in the field. And unfortunately, down to an individual customer level, we're not there where we can provide guidance on exact restoration times. We know, generally speaking, when the total thing's over with, but not individuals. But we tried to focus on customer communications as we could. Again, as Ms. Roach said, we have a lot of customer accolades, and we don't have to focus on these individual comments, but generally speaking, from our workers, from our employees out there doing the jobs, they all commented on how the customers were friendly to them, how the customers appreciated their service, how they were treated well. There's always exceptions, but this storm was notable from all of our employees on how understanding and patient the customers were. And that made everything that much better for our employees out there working the long hours, to know that the customers were thankful for their work. As Ms. Rose also said, we have hosted a series of breakfasts around KUB for the people that were involved in the work, to thank them for their effort. You know, we just provided a sausage biscuit and some orange juice. And you could buy a sausage biscuit at the White House, but you know, you can't buy the things. And I think they all appreciated being thanked for their efforts. We also had a thank you breakfast associated with our contractors. And as Ms. Rose said, Chair Robinson came out and personally thanked our workers on the board's behalf. And all that was very, very well received. You know, around KUB, you've been here as long as I have, you know, Blizzard of '93 was kind of the bellwether event. You know, that was the turning point in KUB, that we all use a marker on our career here at KUB. Some people would call it the storm of the century as far as KUB was concerned. But if a detached person go back and look at the Blizzard of '93 and its numbers associated with it, and you compare it to the storm event we just had, you know, the numbers say that the storm event we just had was much more significant in a lot of measures than the Blizzard of '93. More customers were without power during it. We had to replace more poles. We had, you know, about the same amount of customer calls. Dollar amount, even though there was almost twice as many customers out, about the same. And if you go back and you look at the Blizzard of '93, actually there was a big study done at the Blizzard of '93 to make recommendations on how we could do things better. And down at the bottom of the page here, I've listed what those categories were of things that we could do better or do different after the '93 blizzard. You know, tree pruning was one of those. The report said you need to spend more money on tree pruning. You need to be more aggressive. You need to hire tree pruning inspectors. You know, this past year we've just gone through a whole tree panel deals associated just with that one thing. Technology. The recommendations coming out of '93 on technology was, wouldn't it be nice if customers would call in and through their phone tell us they were without power instead of having to speak to a live person? There was no IVR back in those days. Another technology recommendation was, maybe we should use these things called cell phones. There weren't cell phones back then. There weren't the communication aids. It's all by radio back then. We also, one of the recommendations was for us to have some method of automated system of helping dispatch orders. There wasn't an outage, what we know is an outage management system back then. Now we're on our third generation of a system. That so many technology improvements.